Give everybody take a seat. We'll be ready to start in a couple of minutes. Good morning, everyone. Tom Prendergast, Chairman, CEO of the MTA Board. I'm going to deviate just slightly from the normal schedule we have for our board meetings today. Diana Quasha, who's the daughter of Dr. William Ronan, the first chairman of the MTA, is here today. We've got a plaque that we've unveiled outside in honor of Dr. Ronan. The conference room, the boardroom is going to be named after him. And you can see it. We had an unveiling just a few minutes ago. But Diana, we asked Diana to say a few words so she could come to the microphone and speak. I'd appreciate it.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to speak a few words today. My dad has written a tremendous amount of memoirs, at least 2 or 3 tomes on the creation of the MTA, which I'm going to spare you. Someday perhaps you'll pick them up when they're published. But the first paragraph he has in these memoirs say, "The Metropolitan Transportation Authority dominated my life for 9 years. For this I had no one to blame but myself. Its immaculate conception, its bartered birth, and its astounding reach in less than a decade. The blame for all 3 lay mostly at my door. It was a frontier adventure, and the pioneers were shot at, as a matter of course. I still carry the scars." Well, scars perhaps, but he wore them proudly. I think those 9 years were the most rewarding and creative years of my father's professional life. He relished the challenges in creating the MTA, and he faced each day with a bounce in his step, even if he was dodging the occasional bullet. Thank you very, very much for this wonderful dedication of the room to my dad. But also thank you for all these people that are working in this room and in this building, as he would say, for fighting the good fight. I think the expression is, the more things change, the more they stay the same. You honor his legacy and his dream by providing better and safer public transportation to this great city. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Public speakers, Mr. Morello?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have, I believe, 10 other public speakers. Before I begin to call them in the order in which they registered, I've been asked to read a safety-related statement since we're in a new building. The building is equipped with an emergency generator in the event of a power failure. Some of the lights and electrical power will be restored if they go out after a few moments. The public address system will continue to function, and we will wait here for instructions if an alarm does sound. If it sounds during the meeting, unless we see smoke or flames, we will await instructions through the public address system. If we're told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, we will ask you to leave all unessential items here, like phones perhaps, and use the stairs just across the main hallway from where we're sitting. Finally, the closest AED defibrillator is located in the main hall just past the elevators. So, welcome all. The first of our speakers, by the way, we have, as I said, 10 speakers. We would ask all of the speakers to observe and, in fact, comply with the 2-minute limit that we ask our speakers to keep to, so that we can treat all of our speakers equally. Thank you very much. When you approach the 1 minute and 30-second mark in your comments, you will hear a tone and possibly see a light flashing over by the podium. That is your notice that you should begin to wrap up. Our first speaker is Bill Spade. I think that's what it appears. Mr. Spade.
Chairman Pendergrass, my name is Bill Spade, and members of the board. I'm a resident of Chappaqua and an architect. And I'm here with 2 other fellow residents regarding a real estate issue that you all are maybe soon to be considering, but also something that ties very directly into safety. And as you know, our community was deeply affected by the recent accident on the Harlem line, and we feel that this is an issue that directly ties in. I'm speaking about a proposal that has been presented to the MTA Real Estate about a no-build zone for a proposed affordable housing project along the Harlem Line tracks just north of the Chappaqua train station. A developer, Conifer Realty, is required to obtain from the MTA for an emergency exit sidewalk a 10.5-foot no-build zone of the existing 50-foot wide right-of-way of the Harlem Line just at the end of the Chappaqua train station. In fact, the real estate department here has issued a letter to Conifer Realty indicating that they have agreed in principle to this lease, subject to your board's approval. We believe that giving away over 20% of the Harlem Line right-of-way to this permanent no-build easement would be a huge mistake for this for organization, and we advocate that you deny this request. The biggest issues are that it would permanently restrict the MTA's operational capacity in the upper Harlem Line. Right now you have 2 tracks. Any consideration of a 3rd line would not be possible by giving away this portion of the right-of-way. It would also create safety issues for passengers and employees, but particularly first responders in our community. So a couple of other people will also speak to this. Thank you.
Oops. Thank you, Mr. Spade. Next speaker is James McCauley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Jim McCauley. I'm also a longtime Chappaqua resident, and parenthetically, I grew up in Hawthorne, just north of the location where this recent accident took place, and I've been familiar with all those tracks for over 60 years. Here today speaking about the Conifer project, and in my view, the subsurface contamination that extends from the site onto the MTA property. MTA should also be aware that the Conifer site is a designated brownfield by the state DEC, and that the documented on-site contamination extends to the MTA property line. The on-site remediation program requires a 10-foot excavation of much of the site up to the property line. However, no testing has been done on the MTA property, and yet the required egress walk, which was previously mentioned, egress sidewalk, is to be constructed on the MTA property. DEC was not made aware of the sidewalk building during their initial investigation. As far as we know, they are now aware of it, but have not rendered any opinion on it. I would like to, in your handouts, which we have, handouts for all members of the board. The second handout shows a map with the proposed building and the egress sidewalk. I'm not sure, and there is, I believe, in the back, the contamination area. I would like to close with, please, ask you to seriously consider this issue and to deny the request for a no-build agreement or easement agreement on your property. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCauley. The next speaker is Eileen Gallagher, who will be followed by Marie Bowden.
Thank you very much. I'm a resident of Chappaqua, and the mother of 2 children, and I'm very concerned about railroad safety, especially as it relates to housing. Our previous town board approved a special permit for this project in 2013 against a great deal of community opposition. This opposition was solely based on the poor conditions of this site, safety and otherwise. In a subsequent election, a new board was elected, partially on the basis of their opposition to this location. The new town board has steadfastly communicated its preference for the other site and its opposition to this site, included in letters to the New York State Board of Review and to the Federal Monitor, which is attached in your package. In addition, our town building inspector and the assistant fire chief have opposed this proposal due to its great safety deficiencies. There's also pending litigation, which may render this whole project moot at this point. Again, I would echo Jim McCauley and say, please deny their request for this no-build agreement and easement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowden, who will be followed by Patricia Edwards.
Good morning. I've spoken at a number of committee meetings this week. What's very interesting is that some of the officers and people who work there have been very receptive and had conversations with me and are aware of my positions. I've made some suggestions. They're being evaluated. I think they're good. There is some disagreement. But I'd like it to be known that the level of cooperation that I've had in the last period of time is significantly better than it's been 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. I think this room is pretty good. There are some things that need to be adjusted, but the fact that my grandchildren can see my speech today is very important. I checked the ones from Monday, and they came off pretty good. So I compliment the people who've made it possible to have a very good meeting here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowden. Patricia Edwards, who will be followed by Ms. Goodrich, I think, Kitty Goodrich.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kizzy, Kizzy, I'm going to speak about GCS, which is called Global Contact Services for the Accessory Program. Ring, 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 ring.
Hello.
Is this the Accessory Program?
Yes, it is.
Are you located in NYC, and is it a part of MTA?
Yes, we are.
Oh, I thought they shut you guys and shipped you guys jobs overseas.
No, ma'am. We only thought that because they fired 658 experienced workers, and the GCS specializes in outsourcing and offshoring American jobs. But we are in the same place that we have always been, at 33-00 Northern Boulevard. The offices are leased by the MTA, and the floors and furniture are still the same. Even the bed bugs are still here.
What? Why would they give the MTA contract to a company like that?
Well, since we had a union, they may have tried to break our spirit.
Did it work?
Hell no. We fought back and elected the same union, TW 100. Again, we are stronger than ever, and we won't give up.
Is this the MTA and GCS now treating you fairly?
Nope, they fire groups of people every month, some for supporting the union, some for violating rules in the handbook, which change daily, and they fire some before their 90th day of employment. We believe to avoid paying medical benefits.
Wow, that seems like a crazy place to work. Doesn't the service suffer?
Yes, it does. The managers are unprofessional. Some operators get 200 calls in an hour, others 10 calls in an hour. Some operators get disciplined for waiting for headsets and computer stations, even though there aren't enough.
This company seems really unprofessional and unorganized.
Yes, they are, and they even have contracts in West Virginia, Maine, Vermont, and Pennsylvania that they abandoned during the contract. They promised to create jobs and never did.
That's what I was thinking. If they had such a high turnover rate, where are they getting all these workers from?
I'm glad you mentioned that. GCS has been exploiting the most needy in our communities by using the Workforce One, Lease, and the America Works program, which, by the way, get paid for every person they send, regardless if they stay working.
But that's unfair. Aren't those programs helping people to get good jobs?
Yes, they are. But this job used to be a good job until the MTA signed a contract with GCS to lower our wages by $4 an hour.
Can we ask you to wrap up, please?
All the benefits we earned.
I will defer my 2 minutes to Ms. Goodrich, Ms. Edwards.
Okay, then we'll move toward the finale.
Wait, how can they do that? Isn't this Accessory program paid for by the tax dollars? Isn't the agency a state agency?
Yes, it is. On top of that, all the operators who work at the Accessory Call Center are New York City residents. 95% of them are female, and most are minority people of color.
Well, how much does the MTA pay
$152 million.
What? No way.
Yes, and get this. GCS is from North Carolina. The CEO, Greg Alcorn, and CFO, Mark Petty, are from a small town in North Carolina called Salisbury, which is where the GCS headquarters are located. and GCS operates a call center in the Philippines.
NYC tax dollars are being paid to the MTA for the access to our programs, and LGBT, and are using Workforce One, America Works, and those HGCS, South Station, Sunshine, outsourced Workforce One, at C3 offices in NYC and Board.
Yes, that's exactly what's going on.
Well, you must tell the MTA.
Oh, don't you worry. We are attending the MTA board meeting to look at the chairman and the board members in the eye and ask them, what are you going to do to
about
fix this mess?
And go to GCS, stop these. Thank you so much for listening to us.
Thank you. Have a
Thank-
good day.
Thank you very much. I assume that included Elizabeth Wilson and Joanna Jenkins. So that'll get us to Michael Steigerwald, who will be followed by our final speaker, Nancy Montgomery.
Good morning. I'm an Air Force pilot. After the events of 9/11, I spent the next 10 years in the Middle East. I flew hundreds of combat missions. I was injured. In an effort to reinvent myself with my peers, a small group of us started a firm called Drexel Hamilton. We have a dual mission. One is to grow a Tier 1 financial services company, and two, to help our veterans transition to civilian life. Thanks to your finance team, the MTA has been a great partner. Today, you're going to vote on an initiative to help grow that mission, and we look forward to an increased role with the MTA. So thanks for your support, and thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Steigerwald. Our final speaker is Nancy Montgomery.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak today. And thank you for placing the Safety Committee on the agenda for the second month in a row. I hope to see it every month hereafter. And I'd also like to see positive train control on the safety agenda every month, with the indication that we all understand that positive train control would have prevented the December 1st, 2013 derailment, and we'll find out if it would have prevented the Valhalla train accident. I represent the town of Phillipstown. I'm also the widow of victim Jim Lovell in the December 1st derailment. And, you know, Jim worked for himself. He worked for many different entities, and safety was his own responsibility. And a little uneasy because what I've heard in the past few board meetings is looking to possibly place blame on who's responsible. You know, I'm responsible. I'm the deputy supervisor in the town of Phillipstown. When a CSX train comes through and crashes, my constituents are going to look to me to see how well prepared I am for reacting to that. You, the MTA, have laws in front of you that you need to implement regarding safety standards, and these will protect our citizens. Your rail line crosses many borders, many municipal entities, many taxing entities, and it doesn't know, your rail line isn't aware of who's responsible. So I'm here to say I hope I can help us all work together in implementing PTC first of all, and making our trains safer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That concludes the public comment period.
Welcome again to the February board meeting. To begin today, I want to express my deepest condolences to those who died, everyone injured, and their families in the collision between a Metro North train and a sport utility vehicle near Valhalla earlier this month. It was a terrible tragedy, and we're working closely with the National Transportation Safety Board, the Federal Railroad Administration, and other entities, and local officials to determine its cause and any contributing factors. All of our employees and the entire MTA family are tremendously saddened by this accident. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the relatives and loved ones of the victims and those injured. We discussed this accident in detail earlier this morning, and that's the beginning of a dialogue with respect to grade crossing safety, which is one of our highest priorities. I won't rehash that information right now, but I would like to ask for a moment of silence in remembrance of the 6 people who died on that day. Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome you to 2 Broadway. It's our new location for our board and committee meetings. I think you'll find this room a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more attractive, and a little bit more conducive to be able to hold public meetings with the media present. It's more modern and functional than our old headquarters at 347 Madison. And right before this meeting, we unveiled a plaque dedicating this room in the memory of Dr. William Ronan, the MTA's first chairman, who died last year at 101 years old. And I think it's a fitting tribute to a man who was a legend in the public transportation field and an inspiration to everyone who understands that mass transit is the engine that powers New York. There are those that criticize the governance model that the MTA has. There are those that say how it could be improved. But in my entire 40 years in the public transportation industry, I know of no model that has lasted as long as this model has and has delivered as many good capital programs and delivery of public service as this organization has, long preceding me. Starting in March, we'll be making a slight change to committee and board starting times. Instead of listing a fixed starting time that must be adhered to under all circumstances, we'll begin posting a half-hour time range, which will enable us to begin the next meeting if the prior meeting ends a little bit ahead of time. And that's important because all of our times are valuable, and we want to be able to have meetings conducted where you can have the appropriate dialogue and discussion with staff on critical items that need to be decided upon. This new process will help us move the meetings along and limit the time you're waiting for a meeting to start. That's both the board members and the public at large. The minutes of the January meeting have been distributed to all members. Are there any corrections or omissions? May I have a motion to approve? Seconded? All in favor? Aye. Committee on Finance report for Mr. Andrusol.
There are 4 action items on the agenda for board approval. The first action item to be considered and recommended is the service disabled veteran-owned firms to serve in the role of co-manager on MTA bond and note issuances. The second item is the approval of the addition to the MTA's panel of outside counsel. 3, the next item is the authorization of the MRT-2 escalator payments to Dutchess, Orange, and Rockland counties. The final action item to be considered and recommended is the transfer of the 2014 TBTA operating surplus as described in the staff summary and resolution distributed at the Bridges and Tunnels and the Finance Committee meetings. The committee recommends these action items, and I move them.
Any comments, questions? I'm sorry, any comments, questions? All those in favor? Aye.
There are 5 procurement actions this month in the total amount of $1.8 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. There are 5 competitive procurements in the total amount of $1.8 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Mr. Chairman?
Any comments or questions? Mr. Murdler?
I have a question. The real estate items are included under this. I don't see the Chappaqua matter that was mentioned. Is that on the calendar?
The real estate items are not. They're coming up.
Oh, okay.
It's the next issue.
Any other comments or questions regarding the items that Mr. Saul talked about right now? All those in favor? Aye.
There are no ratifications. There are 4 real estate action items which are described on pages 53-59 in the board book distributed for this meeting. The committee recommends these real estate items, and I move them.
Mr. Chairman, now my question.
Any comments or questions, Mr. Murdler?
Does this include the Chappaqua item that was mentioned
No, it's not
by the
there.
speakers?
Is Mr. Rosen here? It does not, is not included. So it's not being acted on today? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bellin? No.
It's not on the agenda for
It
February.
was not acted on in committee.
Generally speaking, real estate items come through finance where they're covered, and then they're brought forward to the board and they're voted on at the board. This item did not appear, I'm told,
That's right.
at the finance committee meeting, and it's not on the agenda today.
That's correct.
Okay. All
So
those-
you have a motion on the real
Yeah,
estate.
we have a motion on the real estate items. Second. Any comments and questions on the real estate items? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Tom, that concludes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Saul. The Committee on Transit and Bus, Mr. Fernando Ferrer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Transit and Bus Committee met this Monday and reports the following. There's one action and procurement item for MTA Capital Construction on the agenda for board approval. The action item to be recommended and considered approves the assignment and assumption of the contract from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey for the rehabilitation of the Cortlandt Street No. 1 line station in the amount of $69.6 million. The procurement item with respect to this contract would approve of modification of the contract for remobilization, extended duration, escalation, and additional specifications and the scope in the amount of $31.5 million. The committee members who were present at the committee meeting considered and voted in favor of the action item, although a committee quorum was not present for the vote. Accordingly, I move that the board approve this action item.
Second. Any comments or questions? Mr. Murdler? Oh, second, I'm sorry. No comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
There are 8 procurement actions this month in the total amount of $27.2 million. As to all of the following procurement actions, committee members who were present at the committee meeting considered and voted in favor of the procurements, although a quorum was not present for the vote. There are 2 non-competitive procurements for MTA New York City Transit in the amount of $9.4 million. I move that the board approve these procurement items.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
There are 5 competitive procurements in the total amount of $8.3 million for New York City Transit. I move that the board approve these procurement items.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
And there is 1 ratification in the amount of $9.5 million for New York City Transit. I move that the board approve this ratification.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
And that concludes the Transit and Bus Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrer. The Joint Long Island Railroad and Metro North Committee report will be presented by Mr. Pally.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Metro North Railroad and Long Island Committees met jointly this month and report the following. There are 5 procurement actions in the total amount of $288.8 million. There are 2 non-competitive procurements for the Long Island Railroad in the total amount of $286.5 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Any comments or questions?
Chairman,
Mr. Murdler?
I'd like to be recorded as voting against item number 2.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah,
Yes, Mr. Ballin?
I'm recusing myself from item number 2.
So noted.
Thank you.
Now I have the board issue up for a vote. All in favor?
Aye. There are 2 competitive procurements for Metro North Railroad in the total amount of $92.8 thousand. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Murdler?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recused on the item categorized as item number B, the metering item. Recused.
So noted your recusal. Any other comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
There is 1 ratification for MTA Capital Construction in the amount of $2.2 million. The committee recommends this ratification, and I move it.
Second. Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye. This concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Pally. The Committee on Bridges and Tunnels, Mr. Capelli.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Bridges and Tunnels Committee met this month and report the following. There's one action item on the agenda for board approval, which is Andrew Albert's favorite item of the year. The action item to be considered and recommended is to transfer the 2014 TPTA operating surplus as described in the staff summary and resolution distributed at the Bridges and Tunnels Committee meeting. Committee recommends this action, and I move them.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
There are 3 procurement actions this month in the amount of $526,000. There are no non-competitive procurements. The 3 competitive procurements in the amount of $526,000. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
There are no ratifications. This concludes Bridges and Tunnels Committee report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Capelli. I would now like to go to the executive session pursuant to Section 105, subset 1D of the New York State Public Officers Law for matters related to collective negotiations. May I have a motion? Second? All in favor? We will go into the conference room right here for executive session. Everybody else can remain in the room should you want to, and we will come back. Good morning, everybody. Good. Yeah, it is the morning. Good morning. Alfonso, I'm sorry.
Hi, good morning. You mentioned that at the safety meeting that began the discussion about what could be done about grade crossing safety. Can you talk about that further? What you're considering? Are you considering technological innovations at crossing to prevent accidents? And do you expect that to become a new priority for the proposed capital plan?
What was discussed at the Safety Committee meeting was not only the incident itself that occurred at Valhalla at Metro North Railroad, it was the overarching issue of grade crossing safety in railroading historically in the United States for both freight, commuter rail, and what the two railroads have done in their history with respect to addressing those concerns. Grade crossing safety is something that involves 2 different modes, the highway mode, automobile mode, as well as the railroad mode. And so the discussion was multifaceted. One was to bring the board members up on the learning curve of what the issue is in a general sense and specifically related to the 2 railroads, what the different programs are in place, and where we need to take the discussion. Whenever you have an incident where a number of factors may be involved, and I'm not going to go too far on that because we're parties to an investigation that the NTSB is undertaking, we're not going to wait for the NTSB to come out with their report, but we're going to be supportive of it. They may issue interim recommendations, but the issue of raising the level of awareness and sensitivity for people who, whether they're our own employees who operate over or near grade crossings or the public at large that drive over them, we need to turn over every stone to find out what the best practices are, incorporate those best practices, and talk to people that are experts in the field. While we may have our own experts, Operation Lifesaver at a national level, these are people that have dedicated careers to the issue of raising the level of awareness. So all of those issues are on the table, Alfonso, from the standpoint of how we educate, how we make people aware. Can we use new technology or emerging technologies to better provide information to people, whether they be employees of the public at large, and provide protection at grade crossing, all of the above. There was an accident just yesterday out at Metrolink, another commuter rail property out in LA. It is a national issue, it's a local issue, it's an issue for everyone. Yes.
Any more discussion on closing the $15 billion budget gap?
There's ongoing discussions from the time the board approved the plan in September that we submitted to the Capital Program Review Board. We knew that was going to be the start of discussions on the size of the program. The program was vetoed without prejudice by one of the members of the Capital Program Review Board, and we've had ongoing discussions with the executive, the legislative branch, as has typically been the case for capital programs. So there's a discussion on the size of the ask. And for those that have heard it, the size of the ask is $32 billion. There's about $2 billion for bridges and tunnels work, which is self-funded. There's a little over $20 billion for state of good repair, what we call renew. Another $4 billion for enhance, improve the level and quality of service. Another $4 to $5 billion for expansion. And we need to have a dialogue along those lines. And that dialogue is ongoing.
In the back.
Yes.
What would be the consequences to commuters? How would commuters feel? How would commuters feel? The effects of not getting the full 32 million, and are you any more thinking any more positively about getting closer to 32 million?
It's far too early to discuss what the consequences are, because first you exhaust the discussion on the size of what the program, establish the need for the 32 billion, and then the discussion needs to come to is how do we fund it? And at that point in time, once you get to that level, there are some things that you have money for, some things you don't, and that's when the dialogue starts with respect to how the riding public at large would be impacted, how the business would be impacted, and how the economy would be impacted. So it's premature to have that dialogue now.
How it would be affected at all, and how service could be affected?
In a general sense, it's state of good repair serve first, enhance second, and expand third. In a general sense, our first priority is state of good repair. We have to maintain this asset that's $1 trillion. We have to make sure it's safe, that it's reliable, and the public can rely upon it.
Mayor de Blasio is in Albany today and this morning testified that the state simply hasn't done enough to fund the MTA. Do you agree with his sense, and are you satisfied with the city's contribution to the pot?
First, I'll talk what other people have said, and then I'll talk about what we say. There's been a reinvention commission of people that were convened across the globe that were experts. There's a Citizens Budget Commission report out on the importance of the MTA to the region. There's the Urban Land Institute that's done some work. There's a number of different people that are stakeholders. And I think all of them say a couple things that are pretty common. One of it is the importance of the MTA of the region. The importance of the MTA of the region not only to provide transportation to people, but its inherent relationship to the economy at large. And those are similar discussions that other large global cities are having. And there's the issue of who benefits from it directly, who benefits from it indirectly, and that's where the conversation goes. It's a little interesting sometimes people focus on the governor, they focus on the mayor, they focus on other people. We've been pretty clear that there are 4 stakeholders that have direct and indirect responsibility. They get benefits from the system, and then we need to have a dialogue with them in terms of how do we fill that gap. That's the federal government, it's the state government, it's the city, and it's indirect benefits like the business community. And the dialogue needs to occur after we determine what the size of the ask is, what we need, and what the gap is. And we have to have conversations with all of those folks because they indirectly and directly benefit from it, and we need to get funding from them to be able to fill that gap.
The capital plan, the 5-year capital plan is for 2015 through 2019. And so we're about to start the 3rd month of 2015. At what point in this year will actual projects need to stop or be delayed because, at what point do you need some sort of resolution out of Albany or an answer from Albany in terms of how much funding you're going to get?
First capital program was 82. We've had 5 or 6 programs. This particular dialogue we're in right now is not that different from others. We have money that can carry us forward because we awarded contracts with funding from 2 capital programs a way ago, the last capital program, and we're having projects that are being funded from that period of time. So for a period of time, maybe a year or 2, we're okay, but as you start to get down that path, we get to the point where if we don't have money, we can't award design contracts, can't award construction contracts. But 18 months, 24 months, we should be okay. But we need to be well on our way at that time to getting closure as to what we do. And don't forget, last time we had a 5-year program approved, I believe, and funding for 2 years, and we came back for the others. It could be that model, it could be another model.
Wanted to ask about the capital plan too. You talk about the size of the ask. Considering the plan you put forward relies a lot on focusing on state of good repair, are the expansion projects going to go by the wayside, or is state of good repair going to be pared back? And then secondly, you mentioned the stakeholders from the business community. How are they going to get the money in your account so you can start putting out these projects for the next plan?
There are expansion projects that are underway, East Side Access, that if we were to either terminate before completion or substantially delay, we may get asked to refund money. So we don't want to be in that mode. There are other expansion projects that, I mean, Second Avenue Subway, first phase, December 2016. We'll complete that. Do we start the next phase of Second Avenue Subway? If we don't have enough money to get into the expansion part of their program, that'd be one that would be up on the table. In terms of funding, like third parties, value capture, if you're trying to, like what they've done in a general sense on 7 West, which the city funded, where they're funding that with increased property real estate values, those are examples of ones that will be third party. While there may not be any hard and fast line of demarcation between state of good repair and enhance, for example, or renew and enhance, a communication-based train signal project is both state of good repair because it's replacing a wayside block signal system that may have been installed in 1930 or 1940, but it also provides additional capacity. So it's kind of it's a little bit of state of good repair, it's a little bit of enhancement. But that would be part of the dialogue, as it has traditionally been. But the board approved the plan with the core being state of good repair. And we need to make sure we cover off that part of the asset and renewing that asset, making sure it's safe, making sure it's reliable, making sure it's there for the people to use the system. At a point in time when we're seeing increased ridership. I mean, 2 years ago we had one day over 6 million. Last year I think we had 26 or 29 days. We're going to see an increased number of days over 6 million ridership in the subway. So we have to be able to provide some additional capacity over time.
Can you just give me an example to the order of magnitude of if the project has to be delayed and then you may refund money? How much of the project? We're talking millions or billions?
I'm not going to get into the details because I don't have them, but we can get you a number. We don't want to get in that mode, okay? There have been projects, even close by, you can review your history, where someone changed their mind on a project and decided not to go forward with it, and then money may have had to be refunded. So we want to keep Eastside Access going forward, and we want to make sure we get it complete. It's a large dollar value project, large scope project. I was trying to make a characterization in terms of the difference between it is an expansion project versus Second Avenue Subway. That was the characterization.
Chairman, 6 of your employee bus drivers have been arrested since the summer. Do you think that they should be arrested and handcuffed for accidents that are absent any demonstrable actions of recklessness like speeding, et cetera?
If there's one thing John Samuelson, Tom Prendergast, and Polly Trottenberg are committed to, it's increasing the level of safety in intersections and those things related to Vision Zero that move toward elimination of those accidents or significantly reducing their occurrence, first and foremost. There's a lot of dialogue about certain things happening, including the one you raised, which is bus operators being arrested. Certainly that's the prime focus that we need to do, because we need to change that dynamic. Second of all, yeah. Second of all, I drove a bus for 30 days. The 2 hazards that you're most faced with are right turns and left turns. And so I can totally appreciate the difficulties bus operators have with respect to turning buses in crowded environments. For whatever reason the legislation was written the way it was, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but we need to get to a place where we're focusing our efforts at changing the dynamic and reducing the accidents. And maybe that means looking at bus routes and not having turns at certain intersections because they're high-profile areas where a bus pedestrian accident could occur. Maybe it's moving the location of where the crossing of the pedestrians occurs. That happened in the history of the city in a number of locations in Manhattan to try to reduce the level of exposure. And that's where my focus is at. And I've got a commitment from both Polly and from John Samuelson to work toward getting there.
Tom in the back, earlier you had talked about separating grade crossings. You said it was impossible. Just in terms of what does that cost, and is it worth prioritizing those dangerous crossings, or is that just too expensive also?
I don't think I ever used the word impossible. What I did say that, and I've said publicly, I think I said it in the safety committee meeting today, a safe grade crossing is no grade crossing, where you do not have vehicles going over tracks at the same grade. However, we've had railroads built long before towns got set up, and the towns got built up around them, and in some cases we've been able to elevate or lower the tracks. There are 2 locations on the Long Island Railroad. We've done it in the last 20 years. Herrick's Road, about $85 million. And then I think it's New Hyde Park. We did it as well. But it can't work everywhere. So there, that's where you layer in technology in the form of flashing lights, gates, and other means of warning motorists to get off, that there's an approaching train coming, and also tie in with traffic signalization so that you can clear traffic lights and get cars off the crossing, all of the above. But when I gave you those order of magnitude costs for grade crossing elimination, they're very, very high, and we don't have enough money to do all of them. But where they need to be done, we'll do them.
Hello, Chairman. New digs here. You brought it up in your comments. I'm curious how you got here. You taking a car? You taking a train? Switched to the subway now? And so how do you get here? And what do you notice along the way?
What do I notice along the way? I use a variety of transportation to get to and from work. Some days I take Metro North, and I used to work out of offices up there. That's as far as I went. When I was president of the Transit Authority, I took Metro North, came down here. Sometimes I drive in. Sometimes I drive home. Sometimes I take the train home. If I've got social engagements related to work that force me to be here late, it's more likely a drive than a ride. All of the above. I've been a user of the MTA network since the time I came here in 1982. And as an observer, the agency heads will tell you I notice things and I report them. Okay? Metro North, the experience has been pretty much the same, although there's been some degradation in terms of on-time performance and longer running times. That's something I noticed. Other customers would notice, statement of fact. In terms of New York City Transit, probably the one I would say noticed the most is, as the rest of the commuters have noticed, that if you want to go down to a very crowded line like Lexington Avenue line at Grand Central or 14th Street, maybe 2-3 years ago, you wouldn't get on the first train, but you'd probably get on the second train. Now, it may take you 3 or 4 trains. That's the impact of 6 million people on the system riding a day. Yeah, we've got increased ridership on weekend and nights. Yeah, we have increased ridership at other times of the day. We're seeing increases in ridership in the peak of the rush hour. That's the expansion of capacity issue we have to deal with, because many people are dependent upon the MTA network to get to and from work. Those are the observations I see for the most part now.
Follow up on Mr. Mocker. Do you ever take a I'm kidding. No.
Do I ever take a
pedicab?
No. No. For a variety of reasons, no.
So I just want to make sure I understand clearly when you talk about the dialogue as it relates to the capital program. When you give the figure 18 months, does that mean that it could be a good year and a half from now before we start seeing some parts of that program perhaps weeded out or skim back if the money ultimately isn't there?
It's an ongoing dialogue. What happened last time is we got money to carry us through about 2 years, then we came back to get the additional money for the remainder of the year. It may follow that pattern. We want to keep away, I think it was the nature and intent of the question asked earlier, where we reach 12:01 on one given day and all work's got to stop because we don't have the money to be able to do that. We have to avoid that. We've never found ourselves in that situation. Somebody asked me my first time I did a press when I came back to New York from Vancouver in 2009, December 1st, why I came back. One of the reasons why is that whatever it takes over the last 30 years, New York, whether it be the state level, the federal level, or city level, gets the money it needs to get the MTA to keep running. Probably more so than any other entity in the United States. And so that was one of the reasons I came back. You don't want to come back to some place and run an operation that you don't have the money to be able to run. So I'm confident we'll be able to get to a point where the size of the ask is consensus, the size and type of funding sources to fund it will reach, and we'll be able to have the next capital program to keep the system growing, safe, and reliable. To my understanding, there is a protocol. I don't know enough about the details. Whenever an issue occurs on our network where an incident happens and there's exposure to the public, we do a review of actions taken against plan and did everybody do what they were expected. That will take place, I'm sure, but I don't know the details of it.